President Trump went on television last night and declassified 269 pages of election security documentation, and I read them all, so you don't have to. Now, if you want a truly unbiased analysis of all of these documents, then go ahead and stick around. But if you want to stay in your echo chamber, then go ahead and swipe up. There were 4 zip files dropped, and their titles cover vulnerabilities in election voting and ballot counting systems, China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data, Michigan voter registration investigation, non-citizens on state voter rolls. Now, if you are the TLDR type or the too long didn't read type and do not want to sit through this comprehensive analysis of all of these documents, then this is what you should take away. The bottom line up front is that the American election systems at every level, from cybersecurity to administrative, still have gaps that can be exploited. That said, there were no successful attempts at exploitation per this document dump. And so the real security concern here is that foreign adversaries are continuing to probe our vulnerabilities and our gaps, and we've identified these gaps, so we should make every effort to fill them. That's the overall takeaway. Your second takeaway should be that these gaps existed in 2020. So when you had a montage of both officials and media personalities saying that this was the most secure election in history, that is technically a lie. It wasn't secure. There were multiple gaps. It's just fortunate enough that none of them were successfully exploited. That's the message. Now, there are at least 2 key takeaways from each of these 4 sections, so overall 8 key takeaways, with a 9th one focusing on Russian interference. So the first zip files talked about China and their overall threat towards our election security. China does not view any particular one election as one that they can manipulate. They actually view a cultivation of voter data as a long-term intelligence process that they can use to target and influence voter bases throughout the election cycles. So it doesn't really matter if it lines up with an actual election. They just want to engage in overall influence operations. And so they are using the voting data to target populations of susceptibility, to cultivate relationships, and to create basically future almost Manchurian candidates, if you will, as they try and identify up-and-coming politicians that they can curry favor with. Arcadia, California's mayor is an early example of this, as she was caught and arrested for pushing pro-Beijing propaganda. But China's efforts in this are systemic and long-term, as they have collected over 200 million records of American citizens through various means, to include this app, where they are creating actual profiles of citizens that they can use to target in both individually and in groups. And so this is a long-term process that they have been executing for a long period of time. And the 2 key takeaways in voting elections and ballot harvesting are that there are real vulnerabilities and gaps that have been identified. But 2, there is no real evidence or proof that they have been exploited. So they are gaps they need to be covered down on, but fortunately, at least through these documents assessments, they haven't been actually exploited yet. Or rather, exploited to a degree that actually changes any kind of outcome is probably the better way to say that. An important caveat here is that these are all documents focused and primarily centered around 2020 and has absolutely nothing to do with what is currently going on in the LA mayoral race. So don't get those 2 things conflated. Now, the 2 key takeaways on the non-citizens on voter rolls is the fact that they exist, and there's approximately 200,000 that have been identified, and that is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And the takeaway is the fact that it's allowed to happen in the first place. Once it's identified, they're removed, but we really shouldn't be allowing it to occur in the first place. There should be some interference prior to allowing those voter rolls to be filled with non-citizens. The other takeaway is it doesn't actually identify how systemic this problem is. It's not that it doesn't exist. That's not what it's saying. It simply says that it lacks the analysis to show how widespread this could possibly be. So that's the other takeaway. And the Michigan voter registration investigation also showed similar takeaways from the non-citizen registration files, and basically shows that Michigan's practices are administratively weak. They have gaps that need filled, and they also don't address the issues until they are brought up. So there's no proactive steps or measures taken, and so it's more of the wait until something bad happens before they bother to address it versus putting in steps to stop it from happening in the first place. Now, all these gaps and issues that have been around for years could be solved with the Save America Act. Unfortunately, it's still stalled in the Senate due to Democrats and entrenched Republicans that are anti-Trump, like Thune and Tillis. But basically, the Save America Act provides voter ID nationwide. That's the bottom line and the key takeaway that 80% of the American electorate wants, and yet Congress is not fulfilling their duties. And so this was Trump's attempt to bring attention to the reasons why we need the Save America Act. Now, this document release also showed that Russia favored a Trump administration to win in 2020. And if that's all you take away from this, then you are literally missing the entire assessment behind why this is occurring. And if you're hearing this and you find it confusing because every single time Russia does something terrible, it's under a different administration other than Trump's, then you have to wonder why they keep wanting Trump there. And if your takeaway is that he's a Manchurian candidate, well, then you're an idiot. The fact of the matter is that under Bush, Putin took territory. Under Obama, Putin took massive amounts of territory. And then again, under Biden, Putin took more territory. It was only under Trump that he didn't do anything. And on top of that, Trump's administration was very abrasive to Putin's efforts. So again, why does Putin or Russia want Trump to be in office? Well, there's one underlying theme that is identified in all intelligence assessments surrounding this subject. From the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, to the 2019 Senate Intelligence Committee, to the National Intelligence Council Election Threat Assessment of 2020, to CISA, FBI, ODNI election security assessments spanning 2020 to 2024, all say the same thing. That Russia sought to undermine election integrity and sow chaos in the American electorate, and the best way they figured to do that was to back a polarizing candidate. That's it. And because the Kremlin is notoriously an expert on psychological operations, they felt that in order to create a polarizing atmosphere and let the polarization do the rest was the most effective way to accomplish this strategic goal. So the overall assessment and takeaway you should have with Russian interference is this: that if you find yourself being somebody that is subjective to TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, that you just can't stand anything that Trump does, then you are what the Russians refer to as a useful idiot and have been an unwitting tool of Putin this entire time. Congratulations.